Aloha, namaste. This is Radha, and I'm here to talk about our new moon in Aslesha, which is coming up August 4th. It's going to be at 1:13 a.m. here in Hawaii, and that is 4:13 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. The moon and sun are coming together in the sign of Cancer in this star called Aslesha. And if we understand Cancer as the sign of the mother, the sign of our unconditional love, where we're the most vulnerable, the most flowing with feeling, we understand Aslesha to be this last nakshatra of Cancer. And it's ruled by the Naga, which is this serpentine kingdom that is upholding our subconscious. They are the supernatural dragons of the underworld. And when we think of Vishnu on his floating many-headed serpent, Anantasesha, this is that energy of what's underneath the dream, what we're creating, what we see manifested in the world around us. And in the same way, what's going on in our subconscious is so much of what actually comes forth in our world. If we don't, meditate and do things to clear out our subconscious, then we could have a lot of different things that are really propelling us forward. We might think we have this volition and this external will that we're using, but if we have all this trauma and drama beneath the surface, that's really ruling the show, right? So Aslesha has this capacity for us to see where we're holding on. Where are we gripping? If you think of the snake coiling around its prey and it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter until essentially it kills it, right? There's a suffocating quality. And in motherhood, we see that when a child gets to a certain point where they're ready to, go out into the world, and there's different stages of that, right? There's like the age of 3 when they start to have their own, their own separate identity. And my son is 7, and there's another stage of sort of letting them go. And then there's when they're teenagers and then when they leave home. And it can be very difficult for a mother to let go of their child, right? It's like, I feel, it's like when you have a child, your heart is now outside of you. You don't get, you can't control it anymore. And you try to keep it safe. And when they're babies, it's your job. But every step of the way, as they get older, you're supposed to release more and more. And often we can see that we get tighter and tighter in how we hold on. And the control is imaginary, right? We don't actually have control. Just like the snake who wraps itself around something, eventually, whatever it is will die if we suffocate it. And the energy of love is one of an open heart, right? Where everything can flow. It's not one of suffocation and blockage. And so here we have that work to do. We have the opportunity to see what we're clinging to, and also the opportunity to release our grip on it and really allow our emotions to flow, to feel whatever's up for us. There's a lot of feelings we all carry, and the more we release them, the more they're gone, and we're able to move on to the next thing. Feelings like the moon are constantly changing. And wherever Cancer is in your chart really shows a point of vulnerability for this reason. The moon is moving in the sky, so it's the ruler of Cancer. And, any Cancer lugna, any Cancer ascendant knows it's like they're constantly shifting where their focus is. And that's why I do these forecasts for all 12 signs, because it really allows people to see like, where's my vulnerable place in my life? Where do I struggle to, to let people in perhaps, or where am I so open and letting people in that I sometimes fail to have boundaries? So each of us have a different story with that as well. And these forecasts for all 12 signs I do in my Patreon group. I do them weekly. And this week's one is really juicy. It has the new moon for each of the 12 rising signs, as well as Venus's shift into Leo. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can just see the alignments. We have our sun and moon here in Aslesha, and we have Venus recently moved in, earlier this week. Well, today, the day that I'm filming this, but earlier than the new moon, we have Venus shift into Leo. And this is an interesting thing because Mercury is already here, and right, Mercury is going retrograde to the day after the new moon, not tomorrow, because it's not the new moon yet. But and the moon will have just moved in as well into this star of Magha in Leo. So in some ways, we overcompensate for our vulnerability with Leo. So whatever area of your life Leo is, it's a place of power that compensates for your weakness, what your perceived weakness. It's really your vulnerability, which is not a weakness. It's actually a strength in its own right. But we perceive that in our world and in our way because it's a place that makes us, able to be attacked or able to be penetrated, and that can feel frightening. That can feel like a very scary thing to be open in that way. And again, back to the image of the mother, which is what Cancer really is showing us. It's the most vulnerable thing in the world to become a mother because, like I said, your heart suddenly is outside of your body. You now have this whole other entity that you have to care for, and it's not just yourself. And you have to care for yourself so you can care for the other being. And so this is a really important thing to understand, the way in which we shift into our stronger energy in Leo is often a place of like control, where we take back the power and that perceived control that, again, we never really have. Power is something that's kind of earned. We stand in our power and others are magnetized to us. We don't lord over people and have this, domination over them. We are magnetic enough where someone might want to follow, is really the truth of the king and the truth of power. So Venus in this place is really bringing out a quality of us wanting to be that leader, usually in our relationships. And one of the funny things with transits is they're happening to everyone. So we often feel like, you might meet somebody with Venus and Leo in their chart, and that's going to be a strong part of their personality. They're going to want to be seen, they're going to want to be admired, and they're going to want to have some level of power in their relationships. But in a transit, we're all experiencing that. And of course, it'll be to varying degrees depending on where we're already at with that. But it will feel like a struggle in our relationships because we're going to be like wrestling with, well, who's sitting on the throne? And we all are. We're all sitting on the throne. We all want to be seen. We all want to be admired. And even people who are typically very shy and behind the scenes still want that somewhere within them. So it's an opportunity to really share that with your partner or even with friends or other people in your world. Really share your admiration and allow respect to flow. Allow yourself to be the kind of royalty that is just magnetic, where your power is coming from how much you stand in your own connection to source, not in how much you can kind of control other people and what they're doing. The sun, of course, itself, the ruler, is still in Cancer and will be for almost, not quite 2 weeks. So we're going to be having this wrestle of feeling vulnerable and taking control in areas that are usually more amicable and agreeable, like Venus and Mercury. Now, Mercury moving retrograde, I've already done a video on Mercury and Leo, and you can see that retrograde motion is really going to have us kind of think about the ways in which we use our words as a form of power, and whether or not we're, activating them in true power, or again, if it's that sense of perceived control. I'm going to do a separate video on Mercury retrograde, so I'm not going to go too much into that, but I really wanted to touch on the fact that specifically Venus was moving here because Venus and the moon really show where we want to connect with other people, and Mercury too, but we're connecting through ideas and words, and it's more of the mental realm, whereas the moon and Venus have a inherent vulnerability of needing connection. And this jump from Cancer to Leo has a break, right? Aslesha is the end of Cancer, and then that's done, and we move into Magha in Leo. It's a Gandanta point. And the moon will be on this Gandanta point, at least at 1:13 a.m. Hawaii time. And Venus is crossing over it as I make this video. And this is a sensitive place between the water and the fire signs where we don't really have a star to bring us into the next area. We're left in a bit of a void. We have to just end with one energy, and whatever we, leave with comes into the next place, but we often can't really fully remember what it is that we're supposed to know in the next place because it wasn't an easy glide. And Magha, particularly, we're calling upon the ancestors, we're calling upon the predecessors, the people before us who walked this earth. And we're not necessarily only going to receive positive advice and solutions, we're also going to see the ways in which things maybe weren't working and how we can do things new. And this is really shown with our Saturn across the way. And as Mercury is going to retrograde back into Cancer and then come back into Leo. So we're going to have a lot going on with that. And I did talk about that already in my Mercury and Leo video, but I'll touch on it some more with Mercury retrograde. But Venus will continue to move forward and get that drishti from Saturn, reminding us that our power really only comes when everyone else is on board, when the little people want to follow the king. If the king is just continuing to hold their power in these ways, the subjects get antsy and want to overthrow. So that's something to recall. And we also have Mars really moving closer to Jupiter here, and Venus is sign of Taurus. So we're starting to see more and more of our beliefs come into that Mars energy of this is right and this is wrong, and this kind of black and white way of seeing things. And since both of them are struggling in this dignity, I mean, really all of our masculine planets are in feminine signs, very feminine signs, Mars and Jupiter and Taurus, Sun and Cancer. The masculine energy that wants to go out and do things is, in this kind of lollygagging place in Taurus, and our ideas and our beliefs are kind of wrapping up in our wants and our needs, especially in the material realm that is Taurus. And then our power, our connection to source, is connecting through our feelings and our vulnerability as opposed to, really standing in leadership and power. And so this can feel like some level of frustration for us. And as Mars and Jupiter particularly come closer together, we might turn that into our belief, because we often want to justify our feelings or justify what feels uncomfortable. Maybe we're not being disciplined, but why not, blame it on someone else? So this is something to look at in your life and how it's showing up. And of course, these are all the things I talk about in my Patreon group when I do these breakdowns for all 12 signs. I do them for the major transits. I do them for all the little transits, because every week we're really experiencing things differently depending on where they are in our chart. So I hope to see you again soon. Have a super blessed new moon. Allowing yourself to be near water or some way in which you can really release those emotions can be very nurturing and very healing. That's one of the things I love about Aslesha, is there's such a healing quality, but sometimes comes with a little poison on the front end. I will see you soon. Namaste.